Glam fam, welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to be doing a video on the Pat McGrath Labs concealer that I just got. So this is actually the packaging that it came in. I picked up 3 of their concealers from Sephora recently. Now I'm not sure how new these are, but they're new to me, and I just wanted to tell you I have been using these concealers before I'm making this video for you guys. I've been playing around with them, and I just want to say that these concealers have quickly become one of my favorite concealers, and I thought I would film a video for you guys to show you how I like to use them. So when I picked them up, I picked up 3 different shades because I wasn't sure what color to go with. So if you guys are not familiar with Pat McGrath is a woman of color, and she makes makeup catered towards women of color. So I think that the brand is really friendly to like different skin tones, and that's why I wanted to try this out, because I have a hard time finding like undertones that match perfectly for my skin tone because I'm Asian American, and in some areas I have hyperpigmentation that needs like correcting and concealing, and in other areas I want to really brighten without looking too gray, ashy, or ghostly, which some concealer colors can do to me. Okay, so the first shade I picked up was LM14. And this one is described to be a light medium with neutral olive undertones. Okay, so that's LM14 again. The next one I got is M16, and this one is described as a medium with peach undertones. So with peach undertones, this is like perfect for correcting darkness underneath your eyes or any like pigmentation, hyperpigmentation that you have on your skin. So that's why I picked up one that has like a peachy undertone, which can conceal and correct at the same time. And then the next shade I got is M17. And M17 is described as a medium with neutral undertones. So I'm not going to say that it goes from like light to dark from the colors that I picked, because they all are pretty much in the same color range. It's just that the undertones are different. So I'm going to show you guys the different zones that I would use these colors with undertones on. I know a lot of times people have a hard time figuring out what undertone they are. Okay, so let me just tell you one thing. Even if you're a cool or if you're a warm, different zones of your face will require different things. So like if you get one concealer shade and use that everywhere all the time and it works for you, that's fine. I personally find that if I have like a troubled area and I have a specific concern in that area, like say I have a pimple, okay, and the pimple is red. So I'm going to want to use something that is going to neutralize the redness in the pimple, like a color that's not going to accentuate it, but something that's going to neutralize the tone so that it looks more even. And then if I have like a hyperpigmentation area, so like this area right here around my mouth, a lot of Asian women get the little hyperpigmentation around the mouth. You don't want to use something that's lighter than you to cover that area up, because over time it's going to start to look gray and the darkness from underneath is going to peek through unless you corrected it first using an orange concealer. Or if you don't want to correct, if you find the right concealer that has like the perfect undertone that will cancel out that shade, you can do that as well, which I personally think is easier. It's less hassle. You don't have to go in with a corrector. Just use the right concealer tone, and then if you want to brighten further, you can brighten on top of that using like a highlighting powder or something. Okay, so today I'm going to show you guys all 3 of the concealers that I purchased, and I'm going to show you how I would use it on my face in the different zones. So I'm going to start with M16. I already have moisturizer on my face. So this is the one that has the peach undertone to it. Just clip my hair back, okay? So again, I'm taking M16, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and use this to correct underneath my eyes. I'm not going to blend anything out yet because I really want to show you the color and stuff and like the tones of the different concealers that I got. So I'm applying this like a concealer. Obviously it is a concealer, but I'm applying this like fully, the whole triangle thing in this whole intersection, because even though it has a peach undertone, it will brighten my under eyes while correcting them at the same time. The next shade that I'm going to use is M17. So M17 is the one with the neutral undertone. Honestly, anything that has a neutral undertone, you can get away with using it pretty much on any zone of your face. But I'm going to use this to correct, or like not correct, but pretty much cover any blemishes that I see on my face and like breakout areas. So like my forehead has been breaking out. I have a lot of blemishes there, so I'm just covering all those areas up. And you can see, I don't know if you can tell the difference, but this shade right here underneath my eyes, this is M16, and this shade right here is M17. And I'm actually glad I didn't go anything darker than M17, because then it would have just been like a foundation shade rather than like a concealer brightening shade. I want to say that M17 is the closest to my skin tone, because it's going to blend nicely over my blemishes without me having to put foundation on. So throughout this whole thing, like, I'm just showing you the concealer, I'm not going to put foundation on top. And then last, LM14, this is the lightest shade. This is what I would say is like my highlighting color. So I'm actually gonna first, before I apply this shade, I would blend out my under eye area for the correction, and then I would go on top of it a little bit with this color. But just to show you like a side by side of the color difference, I'm gonna apply a little bit right here. So you can clearly see that this is slightly lighter than the other two shades. So this one is LM14. This would be my brightening shade, what I would use on my nose, like the bridge of my nose, the center of my forehead, my chin, to really brighten up those areas. You can also use this, like if you're my skin tone, you could also use this shade on its own underneath your eyes to conceal your dark circles or whatever. But if you were to use this shade on its own, after some time you could end up looking gray. I mean, I would still do it. I have done it. And with the Pat McGrath concealers, I didn't end up looking gray. And the reason for that is because these concealers are full coverage. Okay, so for around my mouth, the darkness that I have around my mouth, I'm going back into M16. So that was the one with the peach undertone. And I'm just gonna like lightly feather strokes into the darkness. And a little bit right there. So I'm gonna go ahead and blend this out. And I'm using my damp beauty sponge for this. And you can see that this concealer blends out like a dream. So I want to say that the consistency of this concealer is if the NARS Creamy Concealer and the Fenty Beauty Pro Filter Concealer, I think that's what it's called, if those two concealers had a baby, Pat McGrath concealer would be it, like consistency wise. It's creamy and it's like not too thick at the same time. So I find the NARS Radiant Creamy Concealer to be very thick and goopy. And I find the Fenty Beauty Concealer to be like a little bit thin. So this is the perfect consistency in terms of like being too thick or too runny. It's a really good in between. Okay, so I just brought you guys in a little bit closer, but you can see now the different zones where I applied the concealer. Everything looks very even though I used different shades, because they had different undertones and they were all within like the same medium color skin range. Now I'm gonna go into the LM14, so this is the lightest shade. And if you want, like if you want to brighten up a little bit more, you can go in with this color now. So I'm gonna brighten up underneath my eyes now with this color. Now I'm using all of these concealers only because I don't have foundation on. If I had foundation on, I would not use 3 different concealers. I would probably just stick to one concealer, and that would be underneath my eyes, and that's it, and like maybe my highlight zones, and I would probably use this shade because the foundation would have canceled out and covered up all of like my problematic areas of my face. So for highlighting purposes, I'm using this shade to just highlight the zones that I didn't highlight. And you only need the smallest amount. I'm applying a lot, but you don't need this much because it is full coverage on first blend. Like you don't have to build it up to get the full coverage. So I'm just gonna blend this whole area out and then I'm gonna set it. Okay, so I blended everything out. I highlighted, I concealed, I did the whole shebang. I just wanted to add, I don't think I told you guys, the price of the Pat McGrath concealer is $32 a piece. I do think it's worth it. It's very full coverage. You only need the smallest amount, and this has definitely become one of my new favorite concealers ever. So you get 5 milliliters, 0.16 fluid ounce of concealer per concealer. So I'm gonna compare it. Yeah, so I'm going to compare it to the other concealers. So for the Fenty Beauty concealer, you get 8 milliliters, 0.27 fluid ounce. okay? The Fenty Beauty concealer is $26. So this one is $26 and this one is $32. And you get more out of Fenty Beauty, but Fenty Beauty concealer is not full coverage. This is more medium coverage. So you would need like 2 layers of this to get the same coverage that you get from this with one swipe. And then to further compare, this is the NARS Radiant Creamy Concealer. You get 6 milliliters out of this. And the price for the NARS concealer is $30, which is also a really good concealer. This is very full coverage. And then finally, the Tarte Shape Tape, which is like everybody's favorite. This one you get 10 milliliters and the price of this is $27. So you get the most out of the Tarte Shape Tape, and this is $27. But the thing with this one is it is really drying, but it's also full coverage. And shade-wise, Pat McGrath offers different shades, better shades, because they cater towards women of color who have different undertones. Tarte Shape Tape also has a pretty good color range, but in terms of like correcting and stuff, I would say that they don't have a variety or a good variety like Pat McGrath does. I would give this a 10 out of 10. I would definitely repurchase this. Again, I told you guys this has become like one of my new favorite concealers. I do agree that it is really expensive and you don't get a lot of concealer out of these products, but I still think that it's worth it because it's so full coverage. So I'm gonna go ahead and do the rest of my makeup, and then I'll show you guys at the end like what my whole face looks like with the rest of my makeup. So I will be right back. Okay, so I just finished up the rest of my makeup. I did a full face of makeup, but again, as you guys saw, I didn't apply any foundation. I only used those Pat McGrath concealers, and then I did like a little mini contour, highlight, the whole thing, the whole 9 yards. But you can clearly still see the finish of the concealer that I applied, and it's giving me such full coverage in such a way that isn't feeling heavy on my skin at all. Even though the concealer itself is very creamy, again, I described it to be like if NARS Creamy Concealer had a baby with Fenty Beauty Concealer, that's what it would be. But it is still light on the skin, and I really like the coverage that it gives on first blend, especially because I use a wet sponge when I apply concealer, and sometimes I feel like, yeah, it can absorb a lot of product if you use a wet sponge and apply makeup like that, but I like the finish that the wet sponge gives me. And when I use it in combination with the Pat McGrath concealer, it doesn't pick up so much product. It still blends out full coverage. So yeah, I'm really happy with the Pat McGrath concealers. If you haven't checked them out, definitely give them a go because I really think that it's worth it. Okay guys, so I ended up doing kind of a wear test because I've been wearing this concealer all day long. I put it on at like 4:30 p.m. I want to say, and now it's almost 10 o'clock. So as you can see, my concealer did not split anywhere. It didn't split underneath my eyes. It didn't really split on my forehead area. I did get a little bit shiny on the sides of my nose and around my mouth and the little smile lines. It kind of settled a little bit, but to be fair, I went on a picnic and I was sitting outside, so I mean I was facing the sun and stuff, so that could be a reason why. Obviously, like if you sweat, your makeup tends to break up and stuff, but aside from that, coverage wise, everything still looks so good. It still looks pretty bright here. My whole T-zone still looks pretty bright. So final thoughts and review on the Pat McGrath concealers. I want to give them a 10 out of 10 just because I really think that the coverage is worth it. Yeah, they're a little bit on the pricey side, like $32 a piece, but if you are a makeup lover and you're concerned with like your concealer going gray on you after a few hours, because I know some concealers can do that, this doesn't do that at all, even in the summer months. So I highly recommend it if you haven't tried it. And also, you guys know this already, I have dry skin, but I also think that this concealer would be really good for people with oily skin just because of how full coverage it is, and you can just set it with like a loose powder or something to make sure that it dries down matte on your face. I haven't actually tried the concealer without setting it with powder just because I don't usually wear concealer like that. But yeah, that's it. That's all I have to say about the concealer. I love the Pat McGrath concealers. FYI, this video was not sponsored. I bought them on my own. Thank you so much for watching this video. Don't forget to give me a like, subscribe to my channel, and I'll see you guys in my next one. Bye!